What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show. Me, Sean Sheehan, here on Sherdog.com, and I am back with my top 5 bets for the weekend in the world of mixed martial arts. As we know, no UFC this weekend, so I'm actually bringing you 5 bets from PFL, but we also have Cage Warriors this weekend, and I'm going to try out 1 or 2 bets from there. Not the best card in terms of betting. I think the top couple of fights I think are all kind of go to the favorites there, so we're going to stick with the PFL. I've got some good prices with the PFL, but there is one betting cage where I want to have a look at as well, but we shall get to that in a second. Before we do look ahead, let's as always look back, and after a couple of very dodgy weekends, we're back to winning ways. We're back to winning ways. Last week the UFC pay-per-view with PFL as well saw us get a nice few bets, so we hit 3 of our 4 bets. We had Jake Hadley winning at -118. That was a pretty good bet. I think, I talked last week about maybe it being a coming of age for Jake Hadley, and I think it was against a tough opponent. Gina Bishop, I think she kind of did it in a different way than I was expecting, so maybe we count ourselves a little bit lucky with that one, but it won anyway. And in Volkanovski, I think that price -125 I've written here in my notes. I'm not sure if it was that by the time the fights kicked off, but that I thought that was a crazy price, and it turned out to be indeed. The bet that didn't hit, I was very close, is Paddy and Chandler under 2.5 rounds. I think we missed that by something like 39 or 41 seconds or something like that at -138. So that's unfortunate. And our Flier didn't hit. Mitchell by decision, which I think probably people might be happy to lose that bet. But the other Flier was, I was really mad with myself afterwards that I didn't give Jim Miller as my Flyer a plus. I think he's plus 650 or 550, but he didn't win anyway. So, but I think that was probably a better bet. But yeah, that's one of those ones I'm like, I should be looking more at fights like that, I think, and that's what I've actually done this week. We'll talk about that. I also had my pay-per-view parlay, very unlucky here, plus 635. We had Volkanovski hit, Paddy Pimblett hit -148. Although I picked Paddy Pimblett here, I picked Michael Chandler other places, so that I'm no genius in that one. But we also had Yair. The one that didn't hit was Sean Woodson, and that was a bad stoppage, but he was 2 rounds down anyway. A lot of people thought he was 2 rounds up. Me personally, even though I had him in the bet, and I actually really like Sean Woodson. I love his style and all. I did think he was winning, so a little bit unlucky based on the bad stoppage, but when you do plus 635 parlays, that's the type of thing that'll happen. So our record is back a little bit better, 29 from 60. Is that right? It is, yeah. 29 from 60. So we're nearly at our 50% again, which we look to get to, so not too bad. And we've hit the 1 Flyer this year in 11 weeks. And that was Sean O'Bannon, as we know, plus 1,200, wasn't it? Yeah, plus 1,200. So that'll keep us going another while. All right, let's get to it. Right, the bets for this week from PFL, and some very interesting fights at PFL. If you haven't watched my PFL breakdown, please do. But let's go over these fights again from a betting point of view and talk about them again, because the first one I like is the main event, and I'm going to go with Impa Kasanganay at -145. Now, these prices have been moving around a good bit in the last while. He's actually I'm looking at it here. Best price is actually -135 now. I don't know what's happened with PFL over this year. The betting prices have been coming out a little bit earlier and have been more volatile than they used to be, in terms of, I think more people are betting on them, which is a real positive and really, really good, because we can have more of a chat about them and discuss which way the prices are going. But best price -135 now for Impa Kasanganay. And the reason I'm going for this is I'm almost betting against myself here, right? Because I really, again, I have a soft spot for both of these lads, to be honest. I've interviewed both of them multiple times, but for Fabian Edwards, I've been talking about this guy since he was an amateur in early days of his pros, and it's hard to look at Fabian Edwards in the early days and not think like this guy is going to be an absolute star. Now, you could argue like Fabian is the best middleweight in Bellator over the last 3 or 4 years. He's only lost to Johnny Eblin, that even that fight where he lost against Vanderford a few years ago, you could have argued he won that. And so in a way, he has reached his potential, is a hard thing to say, but he has got an awful lot out of his career. But the problem is Fabian Edwards is so talented. It still feels like he hasn't gotten a lot out of his career. It feels like he should have gotten so much more. And I don't know, at some stage you have to realize, like, is this going to happen while he's near the top where he is? Or is it going to take like 2 or 3 losses in a row for something big to have to change? Like, I could see that happening and Fabian bouncing back. The problem with this fight for Fabian is I think Impa is the type of guy who has fought lots of guys like Fabian Edwards. And what I mean by that is he's fought the young up-and-comers. He's fought the good technical fighters. Like, you know, he's been in there against Jacob Indai, Joshua Silveri, Alex Polizzi, you know, Martin Hannah, different type of fighters, you know, very good technical fighters. You know, he's fought Jackie and Buckley, obviously, back in the day in the UFC. He's been in there against a good few of those, right? And he has that experience and he has adjusted the way he fights to beat lads like that. And Impa's so well-rounded and can do so many things, and he does it at a clip that's just going to be more than Fabian Edwards, in my opinion. Like, again, I hate saying this, right? But if Fabian could let his hands go, and I hate that analysis always, right? Because it's the most lowbrow, like, explain what you mean by that. But with Fabian, he's one of the only fighters I actually say it about, because I think it's stupid. Like, give a reason why someone should do what they do, and I can, right? Like, maybe I'll do that in a second, right? I did do it on the previous show, but like, for Fabian, the reason I say that with Fabian is he has everything. He can do it all. He just needs to do it all. And for someone, like, he's one of those lads, you have to have a belief in him almost that he is going to do it some stage. But I don't know. I just think for Fabian, right, something will have to click for him to beat Impa Kasanganay. Because if it doesn't, Impa is so good that he will beat him. And like, we're talking about a betting show here now. We're not talking about an analysis show or what, you know, wishing the best for a guy or whatever. We're talking about a betting show here. Would you bet on it to click for Fabian Edwards? Right? That's the simple question here. Would you bet on it? And I couldn't do that. I hope it clicks for him in this fight or the next fight or some fight down the line. And I hope he becomes the fighter, you know, a lot of people thought he could become. But would I bet on that happening now against someone as good as Kasanganay? No. And do I think Kasanganay has the ability to beat someone like Fabian Edwards? Yes. So in a way, it's a simple pick. Now, again, if you think I'm wrong and you think it will click for Fabian Edwards, I'd encourage you not to bet on Impa Kasanganay. But I'm betting on him for that reason, because I think he's good enough and I think he will do it. I think Impa is the type of fighter who will go out and he will impart himself on you, impart his game plan on you. Where Fabian Edwards, it's almost like he's imparting his game plan on himself. Do you know? It's almost like he's working against himself at times. And he's such a good, talented guy that it's sad to see that sometimes, right? And I hope I'm not being too harsh here on Fabian Edwards. And I'm only saying this because I believe he is that good. But I also, again, think Impa is very good and I think he'll win this fight. So, bet number 1, minus 135 for Impa Kasanganay. After that, then I'm going with a few underdogs here, because I think there are a few genuine underdogs in this card who probably should be favorites and are not, and especially I think Alfie Davis, who I got a plus 110. Let's just check the updated prices here. Yeah, he's still around the same. Best price actually plus 114. So best price plus 114 here at the moment. I think the biggest issue for Clay Collard here is that Alfie Davis almost wants Clay Collard to fight the way Clay Collard does. And Clay hasn't been in the best of form over the last while. You know, he's lost 4 of his last 5. Only beat Patricki in that time, who, you know, Patricki's not at the best ebb of his career, I don't think, at the moment either. You know, lost to Bryn Primus, Burnell, McKee, and Oban Mercier. So it's all good fighters, don't get me wrong. And he beat Shane Burgos, you know, in 2023 as well. But he didn't look amazing last time out against Primus. He just couldn't, get going at all. And it's, he's still only 32, but the biggest problem for him is he's 40 fights into his career now. And for Alfie Davis, a guy, who's just, 23 fights into his career, he has fought a lot of good guys for a guy who, it's funny. Alfie Davis is older than Clay Collard. That's a crazy stat to see, but he's in London Shoot Fighters. He's been in there with Barnouis. Even good guys like Oscar Owensworth, Alexander Shabley, Akon Wanless, who was one of the top pros coming through in the UK at the time. Daniel Scatizzi, who's had a couple of big wins in his career as well. So he's been in there with some real good guys. And I think what Alfie Davis is just a good, well-rounded fighter who is well able to win a decision. Now, he's been to decision, I think, 15 times in his career, 1 draw and 9 wins in there. So a pretty good record in decisions. He's lost 4 of them as well. But he's well able to win a decision. And one of those decision losses was against Alexander Shabley, and in the last, how long is it? Since 2018, he has won something I think he's 7-2-1 or something like that. So an exceptional record over that time, and all those fights have been in Bellator, and obviously one in the PFL as well last time out. And even before that, he had fought in Bellator before that, and he fought in KSW and UCMMA, which is a good promotion over there. So what Clay Collard will be trying to do is what Clay Collard always tries to do: go forward, land his shots, use his jab. And what Alfie Davis is very, very good at is kind of fighting on the back foot. He fights out of London Shoe Fighter, so he'd be training with all of those good guys like MVP and Norbert Navigny and the loads of others that have been there for a good long while. And he's well able to deal with a style that's going to be coming at him, jabbing, using technical striking. He's almost been made to do that. A good fighter off his back foot, hits hard, doesn't have a whole load of finishes in his game. As I said, he's a decision winning him. And you look at Collard at the other side of it. He's a lot of decisions in there as well. I do think if the prop isn't out yet, but if there was a prop here for this fight to go to a decision, I think that's probably a good one. But Collard has 19 decisions. He's won 10, lost 9. So almost 50-50 there, as we know. I just think at that price, having seen what we saw with Collard last year, it might be, I spoke to Kenny Valerian last week about Paddy Pimblett, Michael Chandler, and the curve has gone up for one and the curve has gone down for the other. You wonder, would that be the case here, even though Alfie Davis is older than Clay Collard? But I just like Alfie's game off the back foot. I think he'll catch Clay a few times. I think he'll win at least 2 of the rounds, and I think he'll win the fight as well. I think the wrestling could maybe come into play as well. Clay, Clay's been susceptible in the past, and Alfie, he can wrestle, he can take you down. He's nice trips against the cage and things like that. So bet number 2 of the week is your guy from the UK, Alfie the Axeman Davis. Right, bet number 3. I'm going across the water again. And it's funny, I have two Americans, 2 Englishmen with my my 4 bets here. I'm going for and I was very surprised to see Dalton Rosta as around even money. Let's just get the very much updated price here. Plus 106 best price. Again, I'm surprised that price has moved out. And I'll just have a quick look here while I'm at it about where the price has actually moved to in the last couple of days. Because it opened at minus 105. On April the 14th, and went out to minus 107, then came back in slowly, and it's up, as I said, plus 106 now, best price. I'm very, very, very surprised at that. Very surprised. And I know you could look at Dalton's record, and he's 9-1, and he had that tough fight against Aaron Jeffrey, but he bounced back so well, and that performance against Norbert Navigny Jr., who I rate very, very, very highly, was a brilliant performance. He's a genuine middleweight as well. Sadabusi, it's tough to say what he is. He fought at light heavyweight, he fought at welterweight. Maybe you could say he is a genuine middleweight, but again, I don't think that's a guarantee at all. In a lot of Sadabusi's fights, he's very good at not allowing lads close to him, whether that's close with wrestling or close with striking. But I think that's going to be a tough task against Dalton Rosta. I think he is so good at breaking that distance, so good at taking lads down, and so good at staying on top of them as well. Just doing enough to keep that, keep that cadence going with strikes, not to get stood up. Also, in that Norbert Navini fight, I thought his striking looked better, and he, it wasn't. A lot of what he did obviously was to set up the takedowns and set up getting the fight to the ground, but he more than held his own, and he has more recently in fights. I think like the Jeffrey one is obviously a bit of a standout, where Jeffrey came with a lot of good wrestling as well. Like C can wrestle as well, there's no doubt about it, offensively and defensively, but I just think, again, I think Ross is one of these guys that's maybe turned the corner, and after that last performance, it's very hard to look at him and see many people on the roster that are going to beat him. Now, I again, could be wrong here, and the betting is pretty close, but when I looked at this betting a couple of days ago, and, what was I expecting, right? I was expecting Rosta to be minus 195, maybe minus 200. And when I come on and I saw him as the underdog, I was very, very, very surprised, and he was the first bet I wrote down. I think it's a tricky matchup. Sadabusi is a dirty, rotten matchup for everyone, because he's just that sort of fighter. He can hit hard, he can do it all. But Rosta is an even dirtier one, you might say. And he's without a shadow of a doubt the pick here, number one pick for me. When you give me plus 106, again, without a shadow of a doubt, number one pick for me here. In fact, I think he might be the underdog to win the whole damn thing. So we'll see on that. Right. Bet number 4 is a bit of a one here. I'm betting the price on bet number 4, and I'm going for Mike Shipman at plus 195. I'm just looking at it here again. He's actually a little bit better now, plus 200. So this is a fight, and if you listen to the preview, you'll have heard me go back and forth in this, talking about how both of them were very similar. And I think, if you give me a straight up price, I very much might lean Silveira. I was talking about it on the previous show as well. I didn't know where to go, and maybe in the end I did go with Silveira. But you give me plus 195, you give me plus 200. I think Mike Shipman is a pretty good bet here. Now, Mike, again, is Mike the best fighter in the world? I don't think so. Is he going to win this? I don't think so either. But he's 17-4. He's been in there with some good guys, beating the likes of Charlie Ward, Stephen Hill, Yannick Bahati, Carl Noon, and others as well. He went to decision with Fabian Edwards, a split decision, close enough fight. He fought Casella Van Steen as well, ended up losing that fight. But, he's been in there with the former Cage Irish champion Craig White and beat him. He's no joke. He can absolutely fight. And look, Conan Silveira, when he came through, looked like a real prospect. And, he's had a tough time of it over the last while. The only win is that finger injury against Sadabusi in the last 4, but he's fought Impa Kasanganay twice. And Rob Wilkinson, I spoke to Impa, and he was telling me about how much better that Josh Silveira is. This was actually coming into their second fight. He said he's so much better than he was the first time, and I think that played out in the fight as well. But the thing about Josh Silveira is, he has a very kind of particular set of skills. Now, is Mike Shipman going to get taken on Friday night? I don't know. But those set of skills are not alien to Mike Shipman, if you want to put it that way. He's fought against lads like that before. Now, has he fought against anyone maybe with the submission game, if Silveira can get it down? Maybe not, but against guys who are good, all-around fighters who are well used to being in there and, are not going to shy away from it. He's used to fighting lads like that. I think for Shipman, if he can stop Silveira taking him down, which I think he can, to be honest, and keep it on the feet, I think he has an advantage over Silveira on the feet, honestly. Now, Josh's striking is good and improving, but Shipman is a good striker. He's a good jab. He's a good shot behind it. He's 10 wins via knockout in his career in 21 fights. It's a pretty good strike rate. So, yeah, I really like him at that price. Again, like my pick being, a straight up pick being Silveira is a bit of an iffy one. I'm not too sure about it, to be honest. But when you give me plus 200, I'm definitely sure. And I'm definitely leaning Shipman on that one. Like, I think, you know, Shipman can win fights in many different ways as well. You know, he has never been submitted. He's good on the ground. As I said, he's well able to land those big shots. He's only won 2 decisions in his career, which is a little bit crazy when you fight for that long, you know. But and that split decision against Fabian Edwards is the only one he's lost. Yeah, I think the more I talk about this fight, the more I think Mike Shipman is the pick here, plus 200. I think it's a great price. Again, do I think Shipman is going to blow the world away or win out the tournament? No, but this is probably the biggest fight of Shipman's life, and you know, for Silveira, he's probably thinking, all right, I have to beat the best guys again. This is Mike Shipman is just the one to get over, and that mindset is not great. And yeah, I'm Shipman plus 200. Right. That's the top 4 bets. And now let's talk about the flyer of the week. My flyer of the week is, as I said, I got inspired a little bit by last week, and I'm going to pick as my flyer of the week Vinicius Cenci in his fight with Bryn Primus. And the reason I'm picking that as my flyer of the week is that Vinicius Cenci is a pretty big plus 525 on some books. Now he's a little bit lower other place. I see he's low as plus 240 here, but plus 525 on a couple of the big books here. And that's a crazy price for a fighter. Especially after last week when there was I was lucky with my picks last week, to be honest. I picked the 2 favorites that won in PFL. I think every other fight, maybe 1 or 2 not, but so many underdogs won. And I have a few reasons why I think Cenci is a good pick. I think you look at his record here in Sherdog, and he has 2 wins via knockout. But I went and I watched his fight with Sam Patterson over Dana White Contender Series, and he almost knocked out Sam Patterson. We've seen how good Sam has been since. You know, he's a good switch stance fighter. I think, in my opinion, he's better as a southpaw. Bombs in with those left hands. And we've seen Bryn Primus take a few of those shots over the last few years. You know, we saw the left hook of Rabadanov. It was Rabadanov, wasn't it? It was last time out. Land on him. But you know, he's good everywhere. Look, would you suggest going to the ground with Bryn Primus? Probably not. But Chambino, as they call him, is good on the ground, good trips. Getting the fight to the ground is an issue against lots of guys, but against Primus it probably won't be, because Primus is happy to go there, and he's very, very good on the ground. You know, even on his back, he throws up arm bars and a lot of things like that. You know, and he's 10 wins, he has 9 finishes, 7 submissions. Again, this is a different level to anything he has beaten before. The best he's been in with is Sam Patterson. He also fought against Bruno Silva. Is that the same Bruno Silva as No, it's not. It's a different Bruno Silva, so never mind that. But this is a massive step up. Fought UAE Warriors a time, or has he fought twice? No, he's only fought once over there, but he got a win over there last time out. That's a big show. That'll be good. He hasn't really fought in many other big shows outside of that, which would be, I suppose, the worry for him, apart from the Dana White Contender Series. But we're talking about a flyer here, and from what I saw in that Contender Series fight and a couple of bits outside of that, I think he's a real chance here. Like, Bryn Primus is still a very good fighter. Look, he beat Clay Collard, Solomon Renfro, and Bruno Miranda last year. Only lost to Rabananov in as I said, the midway point of the 3rd round. He's a very, very, very good fighter still, and you know, he's at 40 years of age. But I think since he is a live dog at 29 with that big left hand that he throws from the southpaw position, is he going to get submitted? Like, he's been submitted twice in his career, okay, and you know, Sam Patterson did submit him, but he is very, very good on the ground and has offensive submissions of his own. You know, Bryn Primus has never been submitted either, like, so maybe not. Maybe they'll even each other out, or maybe Bryn will win. Who knows? You know, but I love this flyer. It's a big, big price for one guy to win, and we saw all the underdog wins from last week, so That's the one I'm going for there. So those are the 5 bets. Anything else that stands out on that card? JJ Wilson, he's a little heavy for my money at minus 170. I would avoid that one. Aaron Jeffrey Ramazanov, do you know what? Plus 180 Jeffrey. Again, I just talked about him on his day. He can be very, very good. But I would avoid that one. And again, another flyer, Mark Jacasey plus 500 against Rabadanov. Based on what happened last week, anything could happen here. I definitely pick Rabadanov in that fight, but I won't be betting probably either of those prices there, to be honest. So let's touch on a couple of the Cage Warriors fights before we go. Honestly, nothing too much stands out to me here. The main event, Sean Clancy Jr., this guy is legit. Remember that name. This guy's going to be in the UFC in a not too distant future. He's minus 450, which honestly, I watched a tad bit of his opponent. I think that's probably a good price, to be honest, minus 450. The one guy I would look at is Arthur Leesans, who's plus 300 against Chris Bungard, who's minus 450. I like Bungard, right? He's a good fighter, but I don't think Chris Bungard should be minus 450 in a fight with anyone, maybe. That's, yeah, a little bit big for my money. If I was betting on that, I'd probably be betting the plus 300 guy. But Leesans isn't great either. Not a great record. Hasn't really beaten anyone great. I probably tend to avoid that. The next 2 fights, though, are the ones I would look at. Stephen and Bacchus. Jordy Bacchus is plus 175. Stephen, obviously, this is in Scotland, so he's going to be the home fighter, minus 250. Do you know, Jordy Bacchus on his days is such a good fighter. And, you know, maybe the away fighter. And in the next one, maybe you go with the home fighter, plus 150, Reese McEwen against Wesley Maya. I probably would go with McEwen there. You know, Maya is a very good fighter on his day, but he can be a bit hot and cold. There. So, yeah, those are the kind of the top bets. I was looking at Keir Harvey's on this card as well. He's minus 200. Not a terrible price for him in his fight there. Paul McBain as well is a favourite over Bailey Gilbert. I know Tiernan Loughran's on the card as well. That was only announced maybe a couple of hours ago, so the price for that isn't on either. But slipping in a short notice, you could get a good price in Tiernan Loughran there, brother of Caelan Loughran. So that might be one to bet on as well. All right, everybody. That is it for me. Let's quickly recap our 5 bets for the week. Impa Kasanganay minus 135, and then we've plus money all the way out. Alfie Davis plus 114, plus 106 for Dalton Rosta, Mike Shipman at plus 200, and the flyer of the week, Vinicius Cenci against Bryn Primus at plus 525. Thank you very much for tuning in. I really, really appreciate it. We have we have a lot to talk about over the next few weeks with all these cards coming up. But for this week, we will leave it there. Thank you very much. My name is Sean Sheehan for Sherdog.com, and I'll see you all next time.